Hello, second grade. Today what we're going to be doing is we're going to continue learning more about the Romans. You will need your coloring sheet for today to continue coloring. You have two options today. You can choose either one. You can keep on working on the one from yesterday if you didn't finish. You just need a coloring sheet and some crayons. So if you don't have that right now, please put pause and make sure to go grab that. Okay, great. So we were talking yesterday about the Romans, and we were talking about how Rome grew really strong and took over all of the Mediterranean Sea. When Rome took over all of the Mediterranean Sea, it was very protective of everything it owned, right? And there is a country called Carthage. And the Carthaginians, the people that lived in Carthage, were called the Carthaginians. Carthaginians wanted Sicily, which was part of Rome. And Rome also wanted Sicily. They were fighting over this island. And the Carthaginians wanted Sicily, and the Romans wanted Sicily. So they went into battle. And this battle was called the Punic Wars. And at first, the Carthaginians were winning because they had a navy and they had these grand ships. But then the Romans stole the Carthaginians' idea of the ship and made it bigger. And they made these massive boats. And they formed a navy. A navy is an army on water, right? In boats. And so the Romans took over the Greeks. And now the Romans have taken over the Greeks. They have taken all over the Mediterranean Sea. And now we're going to listen to what happens next. Okay, so just give me 1 second while we do that. Here it is.
Hannibal. Hamilcar had a young son named Hannibal. When he was still a boy, Hamilcar took Hannibal to the temple of the gods of Carthage and made him swear an oath that he would hate the Romans forever. From then on, young Hannibal trained relentlessly as a soldier. He became a powerful general like his father and ruled Spain for the Carthaginians. His one mission was to destroy the Romans. He finally launched his war in 219 BC by attacking a Spanish city allied to Rome. The Romans prepared for another war. They expected Hannibal to attack Rome on the sea, as his father Hamilcar had done. But Hannibal had other ideas. He gathered together a force of almost 100,000 Carthaginians and other mercenaries. A mercenary is a soldier who fights for whatever country will pay him the most. The Roman army was made up mostly of Roman citizens. The Carthaginian army, on the other hand, was made up of a mix of Carthaginians and mercenaries who were not Carthaginian. They were only fighting for money. Hannibal's army was almost ready, but he needed one more thing: elephants. Yes, the Carthaginians fought with special battle elephants trained for war. Hannibal's grand army would contain 38 war elephants. The army was ready. Hannibal decided to attack Rome from the land instead of the sea. This meant a long march across the Alps, the mountains that guarded Italy from the north. The march would be extraordinarily difficult, but Hannibal knew the Romans would never expect an army to attack from the mountains. He gathered his army and elephants and began the long march in 218 BC. The march was terrible and long. Hannibal had to fight many battles with hostile tribes before he could even get to the Alps. The crossing of the snowy mountains took many weeks. Most of Hannibal's elephants died, as well as many of his men. Finally, in the fall of 218 BC, Hannibal's army and the few surviving elephants stumbled out of the Alps to look upon the sunny Po Valley. All of Italy lay before them.
here we learned about this man named Hannibal. And Hannibal did not like the Romans at all. At all. And in fact, he wanted to bring down the Romans. So another war happened. So the first war ended with the Punic Wars, and now Hannibal started a second war. Hannibal wanted to attack Rome. And so it went to Carthage. I'm going to share a screen with you, okay? So that way you can see something really quick. Give me 1 second. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to show you a map so you kind of see where we're going. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And this is the Mediterranean Sea. The Romans had taken over all of this. And they were fighting for this island right here. Remember, they were fighting at first. The Punic War was over this island right here. Carthage is right here. And Rome is over here. So, Hannibal is this man who lived in Carthage right here. And he decided that he was going to attack Rome. But he was not going to, he wasn't going to go through the water. He wasn't going to sail like this. I'm so sorry, my friend over here is barking. So he decided that he was going to go around and over. Okay, so he was going to go around and over. Now, Hannibal had an army, and the people that were in the army, the Carthaginians, some of them were Carthaginians, and then some of them were called mercenaries. Remember what he said about mercenaries? Mercenaries were soldiers that fought not because they loved their country, not because they loved their patria, but because they were getting money. Okay, so keep that in mind. And they grabbed 38 elephants. And what they did was they went from here all the way over here through Gibraltar. They crossed over, they went through Spain, and then guess what is right here, boys and girls? There are mountains. I'm going to show you this view right here. Right here. If we zoom in, this is Italy. They're coming this way. The elephants are going this way. Okay? And then they're going up here, and they have to stop because there are mountains right here. Do you see these mountains? We're going to zoom in because I want you to see. These are some of the most gigantic mountains you will ever see in your life. Miss Santana has gone and seen them. And my goodness, you look up and there are still mountains and mountains and mountains. They were huge. And not to mention that in the winter, they went in the winter. In the winter, it gets so cold and there's so much snow. So I just want you to look at some of the mountains. Let's see if we can find some of the mountains. Here we go. Let's see. Okay. These are some of the mountains that they had to go over. Well, that's a small mountain. But they were huge, boys and girls. They were very, very huge. And at first, they tried going over those mountains, and guess what happened? They couldn't. They were stuck. And they lost a lot of men because of this. They lost a lot of men. And then finally, they got over the mountain and they got to here. And they were able to see this big city called Rome. They were able to see the big city of Rome. And guess what they did? They went ahead and attacked. Big city of Rome. There's the Colosseum. There's St. Peter's Square. There's the Tiber River. And so that's what they did, boys and girls. And so Hannibal marched on into Rome. And the Romans didn't have a clue what was happening. But guess what? The Roman army was made of Roman citizens. And guess what Roman citizens do? They protect their patria. They are not getting paid. They are there because they want to protect Rome. So let's listen to one more video and see what happens.
Rome fights back. The presence of Hannibal's army in Italy struck fear in the Romans. The few armies they hastily assembled were beaten down by Hannibal. The Roman Senate ordered that a new army be raised and placed it under the leadership of one of the consuls, Gaius Flaminius. Flaminius marched north to defend Rome. Let's see what became of the army of Flaminius through the eyes of two Roman children.
Okay, share a story.
Lucius and Servia are two Roman children living on a large estate outside Perusia. Their father, Servius, is an important local farmer. Perusia was originally an Etruscan city, but it came under the control of the Romans several decades before the children were born. Their grandfather bought some property in the countryside outside Perusia and left the bustle of Rome to farm olives there. The children's father was born on the estate, as were Lucius and Servia. Today, Lucius and Servia will make the 2-mile walk into town to try to find word of their father. Because of the war with Hannibal, Servius was taken from his farm 6 months ago to serve as an officer in the Roman army under the consul Gaius Flaminius. Lucius and Servia have just heard that a battle occurred nearby. Their mother has sent them to Perusia in hopes of finding some information about the battle and whether their father is all right. The warm Italian sun beats down on their shoulders as they follow the dusty road, connecting their estate to the Perusian road. 14-year-old Lucius wipes the sweat from his brow. June is always so hot. At least you don't have it as bad as them, says his older sister, pointing to the rows of slaves working the olive fields. Their bare backs glisten with sweat as they pick olives from the hundreds of trees dotting the fields. As the two children come into town, they see that Perusia is bustling with excitement. People are rushing every which way. Shops are closed. Many families are packing their goods into carts and preparing to leave. What's going on? Servia calls out to a shopkeeper who is busy packing his goods into jars. Have you not heard? The man says frantically. Hannibal has marched into Umbria. He has defeated Flaminius and the Romans up at Lake Trasimene. They could be here by nightfall. Servia gasps. Lucius stares open-mouthed as they both ponder what this news means for their father. What of the Romans? Servia asks the man. Are there any survivors? The shopkeeper looks up grimly. Not many, young lady. Not many. Tears well up in Lucius's eyes. But wait, the man says. I saw some wounded stragglers coming into town by the west gate. Your father may be alive. If he is, I'd look for him there. Thank you, calls Servia, grasping her little brother by the hand and dashing off through the crowd toward the west gate. The west side of town has been converted into a field hospital for wounded soldiers. Every shop, sidewalk, and patch of grass is taken up by bloodied and bandaged Roman soldiers. Local women dash here and there, bringing water and fresh cloth for bandages. Others search among the crowded streets, calling for their loved ones. From the gate, Servia and Lucius can see a long, narrow line of wounded men still flowing into the city from the hills to the west. Lucius! Servia! The children turn at hearing their father's voice. They find him lying against the city wall near the gate. The children rush to him in a tearful embrace. His ankle is twisted, and he has a bloody bandage around his head. Dada, what happened? Lucius asks, clasping his father's hand. Flaminius heard Hannibal was moving south to attack Rome, so he marched us hard to catch up. It was a terrible march. We spent days in the hot sun with little time for rest. Everywhere we went, we saw the country burned and destroyed around us from Hannibal's army. What did Flaminius do? Asked Servia. This made him mad. He swore he would catch Hannibal and punish him. Yesterday morning, we began our march along the north side of Lake Trasimene. Fog covered the water and clouded our vision. We thought Hannibal was marching south around the lake toward Rome, but he had hidden himself in the hills north of the lake. Then what? Lucius asks his father. Before we knew what happened, the hills were swarming with Carthaginians. We had nowhere to go. Our backs were to the lake. They just kept coming. Servius' voice trails off. I'm so glad you made it home, Servia says, lovingly stroking her father's sweaty, matted hair. She hears Lucius sniffling and turns to see him wiping tears from his eyes. Lucius, she says, I will stay with father. You run home and fetch the servants. We must get father back home quickly so mother can tend to his wounds. Servius was a lucky man. The majority of the Romans at Lake Trasimene did not survive. More than 15,000 were killed by Hannibal and the Carthaginians. Another 65,000 would die only a year later in 216 BC at the Battle of Cannae, another disastrous defeat for the Romans.
Okay, so we just heard a lot that happened. Let's try to remember what he said. So, Hannibal is in the mountains. He's hiding there. He's able to see Rome. Now, Rome has decided that they're going to have a new leader for their army, and his name is Flaminius. So the Roman Senate said, we're going to make Flaminius the leader of the army now. And Flaminius said that Hannibal is not going to take over Rome. We are going to go fight him. So he takes almost all of the men from Rome, and they go marching up to the mountains, to the Alps, okay? So they're going up, and we heard a story from two children, Lucius and Servius, okay? And Lucius and Servius, their dad was part of one of the men that went up to go fight Hannibal. And their mother heard that some of the soldiers were back in town, this town called Perseus, okay? And they came to this town, and what they saw in the town was terrible. Everyone was leaving. Anywhere that there was an open space was a place where soldiers were wounded and hurt. It was like a hospital. And finally they found their father, and they asked him, Father, what happened? because his father went and fought up in the mountains with Hannibal. So his father tells them, it was terrible. Everything was burnt down. The cities were all in flames. Hannibal was attacking us from the north and the south and the east and the west, and they were hiding in the mountains. And he says that 15,000 Romans died. 15,000 Romans died. And so there's this big war, right, going on. And Hannibal has just defeated a lot of the Romans. And now everyone's afraid because guess who's coming into Rome? They're making their way down. I'm going to share with you the screen again. Give me 1 second. Okay, let's see. Okay. So this is what they see. They're coming into Italy. The little boy and the little girl's father was from Rome, and their army, the Roman army, went from here. This is what happened. They went from Rome all the way up to the mountains. All the way up to these mountains. And when they got over here to the mountains, Hannibal came out. Right here, these mountains, I'm sorry. Hannibal came out and started attacking the Romans. So Hannibal is now making his way down to Rome. So Hannibal is coming down from the mountains from here, and he's coming down into Rome. But everywhere that he stops, every city that he stops, he's burning it. So everyone here in Rome is so afraid because Hannibal is coming back down and they don't know what's going to happen. So that's where we left off today. Next week, we'll figure out what happened. What is happening to Rome? They thought that they were in charge of everything. And guess what's happening now? They're losing the battle. They're losing. And they're being taken over by Hannibal. Hannibal and his army, the Carthaginians, the Roman, the Greeks, are coming down and they're gonna take over Rome. But let's see what happens. Maybe Rome fights back and maybe Rome still wins. So we'll see what happens, okay? I will talk to you next week. Have a lovely weekend. God bless, and totus tuus, Maria.